Should the rich pay taxes? I think we should go back to the 90% top tax rate that we had during the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and early 80s when America was prosperous. Charles Sauer disagrees. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Sauer is on the line with us. He is the Libertarian economist and president of the Market Institute. MarketInstitute.org is their website. He's also the author of a book, Profit Motive, What Drives the Things We Do. His Twitter handle is Charles Sauer, S-A-U-E-R, at Charles Sauer, or at Market Institute. Charles, welcome back. I want to bring back the American middle class that we had when I was a kid. You know, my dad's American middle class. And that middle class was built in large part on a 90% top income tax bracket. So that this was back before Reagan. This was before we had a single billionaire in the United States. But what we did have was the fastest growth in middle class and even poor people. The income of the bottom 40% was growing faster than the top 5%. I want to bring that back. I want to bring it back with a top 90% tax bracket. Obviously, most people it wouldn't even affect. You'd have to make at least a few $1 million a year before you'd even be looking at the possibility of getting into that tax bracket. But it seems like a reasonable thing to me. What say you?
I'm disappointed in you, Tom. That's what says me. I'm disappointed that you don't just propose a 100% tax rate. Look, if we're going to play with magic numbers, you may as well just put it up to 100% and call it a day. Look, the fact is we did have a 90% tax rate, but if you look at the tax revenue,
and it wasn't magic.
That's been generated. It didn't work. The same tax revenue as what has been generated from, 1940 up until now. It goes back and forth between about 20% and 15% of GDP is what we collect in tax revenues. All that we did is we've knocked down the tax rate is take out the exemptions so that rich people can't deduct their dinners out or their memberships to the clubs, to a country club. And so as we've taken those out, then money becomes more efficient. And so that's where we see that, now we have multiple TVs in each household. We have multiple color TVs. I bet you didn't have that when you grew up. But now our middle class looks different. Our middle class looks like a successful person.
Charles, there was a time when we didn't have light bulbs. And number one, and number two, tax revenues, tax collections have run 17 to 20% of GDP, forever. But the simple fact of the matter is that when my dad was a kid, when my dad was young in the 1950s and 1960s, not a kid, but when I was a little kid, when he was in his 30s, 1/3 of the federal budget was paid for with corporate taxes. It's now 6%. Wealthy people were paying much higher tax rates. You had the president of Chrysler. I remember Lee Iacocca famously taking $1 for a year as he was turning the company around. And I believe it was William Safire pointed out, well, he only normally takes $1 million because if he takes any more than that, he would throw himself into the 90% tax bracket anyway. So this isn't that huge a sacrifice. What we've seen is that Reagan raised taxes on average working people 11 times. He cut taxes on the wealthy 18 times. We now pay, because of Reagan, average working people now pay income taxes on Social Security money. They now pay income taxes on Social Security disability. They now pay income taxes on unemployment benefits. They now pay taxes on tip income, which used to be taxable, but there was no mechanism to actually collect it. Reagan put that into place. The middle class is, yes, we're collecting 17% of GDP for taxes, but more of it is being paid by the middle class and less of it is being paid by the rich, which is why you've got, over 1,000 billionaires in the United States.
That's just not true. If you look at the tax rates, you're actually correct. But the tax rates has never been who was paying taxes. That's not been who's paying taxes. And that's where I'm right when we look at the revenue by GDP, because That is what is important here and what we should focus on, because the actual effective tax rate for somebody in the
hang on just a second, Charles.
Is lower today
I'll give
than
you
it was
that revenue as a percentage of GDP is going to have an impact on, whether government can function, whether it can pay its bills and things like that. Sure, that's an important number to look at. But what I'm talking about is the use of tax to alter behavior. Taxes do two things. Taxes, number one, pay for government. Taxes, number two, alter the behavior of the people who pay the taxes. And that's why we have tax laws that encourage behaviors that we want. For example, we give a tax break for research and development because we want companies to be innovative. And so what we have done now is we have radically cut back on the taxes on very wealthy people, which used to discourage them from hiding all their money in money bins and offshore places and encourage them to pay their workers better and put more money back into their companies. And instead,
what are you talking about? That's the exact opposite. That's the elasticity of this meant that they were hiding the money. They had the company cars. They had the country club memberships. They had free food. They had anything they wanted because they were still going to get paid the same amount.
That's just nibbling around the edges,
what
Charles.
The rate was.
That's just nibbling around the edges.
That's real money.
Are you telling me that
if you look at the elasticity of demand for this labor group, it's not going to change. When you increase the taxes, they still demand the same amount of money. They're going to get it one way or the other, whether it's in deferred payments by having stock in the companies, whether it's by fringe benefits. They're going to get their money one way or the other.
Then why weren't they getting their money one way or another from the 30s until the 80s? Why was it that during that period of time, the middle class was growing in both income and wealth, and poor people were growing in both income and wealth faster than were the top 5%? That was purely a function of tax policy.
Was incentivizing poor spending. Look, as soon as we started getting rid of that, that's where our that's where our innovation boom started happening, because the tax benefits, the tax deductions that we left in were for research and development, but everything else went away, which meant that companies were incentivized to spend money correctly, efficiently, and actually grow their companies and grow their business. And that's what grows the labor force.
You're talking about corporate tax rates. I'm talking about personal tax rates.
These end up all going into the same group. We've talked about corporate tax rates.
The money ends up in the same place, but corporations and individuals are incentivized in different ways by different levels of taxation and in different categories.
I like that you admit that, because as you increase the corporate tax rate, you incentivize companies to move away. That's what ends up hurting labor.
Not if you make it illegal.
Middle class, then you increase the corporate tax rate, because
it wasn't until Reagan brought back the GATT, and negotiated NAFTA that corporations could move their companies overseas. We were operating under the Buy America Act, FDR's Buy America Act, until Reagan came along and started issuing waivers.
Look, unlike
behavior.
The left that likes to look back on history and dream about it, I realized that there was a lot of domestic abuse. There was a lot of racism. There was a lot of bad things happening in the economy back in the 50s.
But they weren't a function of tax policy.
That aren't happening today. We're at a better place. We need to continue moving towards that better place, and that's less taxes and the better labor.
Okay, I leave you with the final word. Charles Sauer, Libertarian economist, president of the Market Institute, marketinstitute.org. His new book, Profit Motive, What Drives the Things We Do. Charles Sauer, Sauer on Twitter. Charles, thanks for dropping by. It's always good talking with you.